This is topic is on my dissertation, which is in process. So I'm just going to start by talking some background information on my project and then focusing in on a small portion of the results. So I wanted to start by sharing my problem statement with you. And we've heard it here today early on that librarians have a foundation to be doing this sort of work, partnering with researchers and whatnot. And so, the question is to what degree do we actually have a role at the institutional level? And then what are the changes that have had to occur within the library to assume that role, and as well, what has been the leadership challenges with bringing that about? So, the problem is we don't really have those answers to this point, and so this is really what my study has encompassed. And today, like I said, I'm going to be focusing in on number 2, the changes that have occurred and how librarians are responding to those changes. So, when you need to come up with a dissertation topic, you need to be motivated by some question that you have in the back of your head. And so the Association of Research Libraries, the task force on e-science, had said that, this is an opportunity for research libraries to engage with the broader community in a fundamental reassessment of the library's role, in essence redefining the research library for the future. So I kind of asked that question, is this really a transformational change is my question. Have we really entered into a period where we're redefining ourselves? So my framework for the study is based on the work of Levy and Meary, organizational transformation. And they have 2 degrees of change, or orders of change, or nature of change, and their first order and second order. And so the first order change is something that just kind of is occurring naturally, kind of slowly over time. It's kind of happening so slowly you're not really aware of it. It's, you don't really need to have a new view. You're using the same values and going by the same norms that you've been using all along. There's no, people really don't have any difficulty embracing the changes that they're seeing in front of them. They feel equipped to do this thing. It's not a fundamental change in strategy, core values, or your identity as an organization. Where a second order change is something that's going to start to transform the very core of your organization. It's viewed as being multidimensional, multi-level. It's radical organizational change. It requires a whole new shift or view, kind of a new world view. It's breaking away from the previous way of thinking and doing things. So this is the framework that I'm going in with the question. So my study design is qualitative. I'm looking at a multiple case design. I've been using semi-structured interviews. I've tried to seek out participants at the institutional level, strategic partners that the library has identified, people who are helping the library break into this role, and talking to library administrators, both director and associate director. And I've also talked with librarians who are actually doing the work in a focus group environment. So a little bit about my site selection. I have chosen, the statement I was working from came out of the Association of Research Libraries, so that's where I looked to start with. And in 2010, when I started, there were 126 ARL libraries. I guess that number can vary slightly from year to year. But there's also public libraries in there, and there's a number of Canadian libraries. So this is just a process of me getting down to my actual 4 case study. So you take out the non-academic, the Canadian, And then I went and looked at the institutional level and the library level, looking at strategic planning documents to see if I could mention mention of e-science. And what I needed to find was it present in both levels. And that brought my number down to 31. And from those 31, I tried to rank them because I wanted to talk to people who were established and working in this field so that I could get a sense of the changes that have been happening over time. And I was able to group the 31 libraries into people who were really just getting started, people who were kind of in the middle, and then I came up with 10 people that really had an established program and services. So I then had to vet that list. I sent it out to 3 different people who had experience with ARL libraries and what's been going on in eScience to ask if I had properly placed these libraries. And then, it comes to this question of really how many case studies am I going to do? And in talking with my dissertation committee, they were, well, all of them. I said, no. And then they said, well, 8. And I said, no. But then the number came up to be 6. And actually, I was moving forward with 6 case studies. And through pre-testing, there started to be some overlap in the characteristics of these libraries. And by the time I came out of pre-test, I was down to 4. So I thought that was manageable. And just to give you a sense of the data that I ended up with about 65 hours of tape to be transcribed and coded. So back to my question that I'm going to talk to you about today, is this a transformational change that is occurring? So from my data, I have a list here of some of the changes that I have gotten. The key is director, associate director, and librarian. And if a librarian or more than one said it, I indicated that. So what I have is what I want to just mention to you today was looking at some of the common changes, something that was identified by all 4 sites. And so I see things like new department, new services, new positions. This was a change in the staff, the role of the librarian. And that it was an opportunity to go out and reach new faculty member students and especially administrators. The librarians I talked with said that they were partnering more with people within the Office of Research, Office of Information Technology, things like that. So this is kind of where I'm at in my research, so this is still a little bit going around in my mind. So those changes that were common across all of the libraries, I started thinking just about in my program. We talk a lot about change management, and Cotter is a well-known change management theorist, and he has a theory of change, 8 steps. So I started looking at some of those steps that I had commonalities I had just talked to you about, and so I'm trying to line these up. This is what's coming into my brain as I'm analyzing this. And so, what I was finding is really that, there was an identified need on the campus, and that the library administration steps up. They say, we have a role here, we can do it, we have the skill. And really what they started off doing is assigning maybe 1 to 2 librarians to take this on. And then things start to change. And, it's this idea of, services that was mentioned earlier to moving more towards the user. And, there's this, okay, where instead of just providing 1 or 2 services, now I'm assuming a new role. I'm starting to take on new responsibilities, and I'm starting to view what I do differently. And so I've just tried to line some of these up with Cotter's steps as well. And, he says get quick wins, step 6. And, when in the library, what they're saying is they have new relationships. They have new strategic partners, people who are out there now advocating, people who are talking about the success that the library has had and helping spread the word. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now in thinking about it and seeing some parallels. And what I wanted to do was just share with you a couple of the quotes that I have to help support this process. So I think I got a really lot of great information from the people I spoke with, and I really appreciate that. And they just really give me a lot to think about, and some of these I wanted to share with you. So talking about the Library Administration Acts, the data piece is specific enough that we should approach it in a dedicated way. So what a great support coming down from administration into the librarian's daily work. New relationships being formed, they meaning department administrators, those who are kind of working with the PIs and doing a lot of the work for them, have been a really important partner, and we recognize that early on and built that relationship solidly. So just some pieces of data that I wanted to share. So another question I asked about, as opposed to, what changes have you seen, I've asked administrators what changes they see coming down the road. And here I don't have a nice, they're different. The most I have here is maybe two sites mentioning a few things in common. And I attribute this more to the local culture, the local environment, things that are happening at that site. Each library administration, each institution is just a different animal. So I wasn't all that unusual, I think, here to see things that didn't really line up. And then I wanted to ask the librarians, well, not just what changed, but what has been your experience of that change? And again, I don't have a lot of, there's nothing here that's common to all 4 sites. But, I'm trying to think here. So the things that were common across 2 sites, that this requires a new attitude. I had to go and learn some new things on my own. Another experience was that there's some resistance across the campus about the faculty not feeling they need this. That their experience is that this is, an opportunity for me to work with people I haven't worked with in the past. And one comment I had here that this is really a new era. And so, a new area that they're moving into, sorry. So some of these things are, they're starting to answer my question for me. Is this a transformational change? So I asked them, would you consider this to be, evolutionary, or would you consider it to be transformative? And it wasn't so black and white. Most felt, it was almost, they were saying they thought it was evolutionary. It was just slowly building. And then there was this strong sense it's a little bit of both. And as well, there was some comments that I thought were interesting, that the library is simply reacting to some outside forces. And so I just have some comments associated with that, with it being evolutionary. I thought that rapid little steps, or kind of a hurry up and wait, and that, that the transformational changes are happening outside of libraries, and that the library is really just trying to keep up. And that is a lot about what we heard already today as well, about how scientific research is conducted, and the emphasis on collaboration and interdisciplinary research. And from the directors as well, I saw some aligning here, and comments that it takes time to develop a vision and to set the goals and to bring changes into the library. And some of that is, it was almost like, well, this is academia, everything is processed to death before it's brought out. Finding the resources takes time. That we had a period of kind of, trying something and it not quite working, so that they were in this period of experimentation. And also thinking that the successes have been kind of small and far between. So it's just because we haven't had a lot of successes or opportunities for success that the idea is that this has been more evolutionary in nature. And then some of the comments that I've assigned to the fact that there is a blend here. You know, the ideas are revolutionary for librarians. If we had more time, we could be revolutionary. You know, it's the resource constraints that are stopping us from being transformational. I like the last quote. I think that the library at large, it is revolutionary. I would share that with my manager. I would share that my manager looks at it and says, this is the future of libraries. It is quite revolutionary. It really shakes the fundamentals of what libraries do, but we are just at the early stages of it. It has great potential. So, almost there. And then one of the other questions, again, that I wanted to ask to help put me in one category of first order change or second order change is to ask if this was a change in content or a change in context. So content being everything is brand new to me. I don't know what I'm doing. I have to go out and learn new skills in order to manage this work, versus a context meaning just the environment has changed and my role in it has changed, but it's the same type of things that I know how to do. So most people thought it was a change in context, or again, they thought it was a little bit of both. I really only had one person who thought it was a straight change in content. So saying, you know, the fact that we're getting involved earlier in the process makes it feel like it's a change in context. So it certainly is the context, because we've traditionally been at the point of helping the faculty member find supplementary information to help them with their current research. Here we're helping them conduct their real research as opposed to literature reviews or looking things up. So to them, this is putting them in a new role altogether. And then in the blend, it was more things talking about that there's a learning curve, that I need to go and do this all on my own and to get up to speed. But it just depends on where you are in that process of whether you're going to think it's a change in content or context. You know, the second quote here, they're using a lot of the same skills that they had always used, but the fact that it's now a data set is making it different. So it's a blend. So back to my first order, second order, and some of the things that I've mentioned. This is just a chart that Levy and Murray had put together, and I'm pretty much 50-50 here. And when I try to ask this question, you know, it seems overall that it was just a change in one or two things, and that it wasn't a whole huge group of people who have been affected. It's just done a few people, you know, and that it has been overall incremental and much more logical and rational, as opposed to something that's being based on a totally different logic. However, many of the librarians are saying, you know, I have to view this as something different. So this is something I'm still trying to work out. This is where I'm at. I'll be writing this chapter this month. If anybody wants to give me feedback, I'll be happy to take it. So again, just some of the research questions that I'm asking. You know, is this a transformational change? I don't think it's so black and white. I think it's kind of one of those shades of gray types of things. And some of the other questions that I'm also related to this, you know, what is the role of the library in the larger institution, and also I have a lot of information that I'm pulling together about how this has affected library leadership and the challenges and things related to that. Just a quick funding statement from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, the Medical Library Association, and Simmons College. And as well, thank you to many of you in the audience who have been supporting me throughout this process. I appreciate that very much. And I'm at UMass if you need to get a hold of me. So.